So yes, my name is Jeremy Bacon. I am the Assistant Field Office Director with ICE ERO, which is ICE Immigration Customs Enforcement, ERO Enforcement and Removal Operations in Kentucky. I oversee all immigration enforcement operations in the Commonwealth of Kentucky and the southern portion of Indiana. With that, we are encompassed within the Chicago field office that is 6 states wide: Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, Kansas, Missouri, and Wisconsin encompass us. So I'll give a very brief presentation, and then we'll get to your specific questions. So obviously, on the basics of background, DHS was created post 9/11 in 2002, and the reason I bring this specific slide up is because all three of these agencies here are present within Kentucky. ICE, obviously, ERO, also within that is Homeland Security Investigations, which handles a lot of the child exploitation and the trafficking. U.S. Customs and Border Protection, which is at your ports of entry. Here we have some presence in Louisville, also at the airport in Covington, CVG. And then the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, they handle the legalization side of immigration and the benefits and the applications. ICE's mission is to protect America from the cross-border crime and illegal immigration that threaten national security, public safety. This mission is executed through the enforcement of more than 400 federal statutes, focuses on smart immigration enforcement, preventing terrorism, and combating the illegal movement of people and goods. Sorry. So that kind of gives you a little broad of where we are. As I said, we encompass here in Chicago that cover the 6 states. What we do, and as brief as I can give a Cliff Notes version of it, is that ICE ERO is the enforcement entity in the interior United States of the immigration laws. How we do that is through four main phases. We identify, arrest, detain, and remove subjects that are amenable to our immigration and nationality laws. ERO directs our limited resources towards non-citizens posing the greatest threats to our homeland security through intelligence-driven leads. Now, the foundation, and I think this is more specific to Kentucky in general, but also nationwide. The majority of our ability to be able to carry out our job here in the interior is based on foundation of partnerships and cooperations with local jails and local departments. That's who we are. Our goal is to be a valued participating law enforcement partner in all of our communities. We want safer communities just like any other law enforcement officers do. I think one of the most important things that can be taken from this presentation is this information here in regards to detainers, which I think will probably answer some of the questions in terms of when you hear an immigration holder, this is what we're referring to. A detainer is a lawful request issued by ERO to federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies to maintain custody of an identified non-citizen for up to 48 hours beyond when they would have otherwise been released, or to provide notification as early as possible, allowing ERO time to assume custody before the subject is released. This is one of, in my opinion, the primary way ERO carries out our public mission and helps safely remove non-citizens before they can be released into the community as potential reoffenders. These are subjects that are already in our communities that are breaking various crimes. They're arrested locally. This is just a request based for local jails and jurisdictions to hold on to that subject after we've identified that they are amenable to removal proceedings from the United States. So this is a simple ask of folks that are already in our local jails that are already causing problems within our communities. Is the best way to explain that. ERO focuses our enforcement efforts on criminals and those who pose a threat to national security, public safety, and border security. As explained a minute ago, the backbone of our job here, especially within Kentucky, is cooperation of local, state, and federal partners. We here in Kentucky specifically, we only have 27 law enforcement officers to enforce the immigration laws throughout the entire Commonwealth and the southern portion of Indiana. So that presents extreme amounts of hurdles, logistically and safety wise. So I think the first question we'll probably get asked is, how do we find out if a subject is in local jails? There are various ways. The main one is essentially old school law enforcement sharing. Our officers are members of our communities. We try to make ourselves available as much as we possibly can, going to various law enforcement meetings, sharing what we can and can't do, passing around our business cards, you name it. We are members of our communities, and we want to be a viable law enforcement partner to our communities. Oftentimes, we also do a lot of screening of the local jail populations. Anyone that's foreign-born that goes in to any jail in Kentucky, we're attempting to screen and see if there are any laws that are amenable with them. And encompass in that, this is not just subjects who are here illegally undocumented. Sometimes people who have status here are also subject to removal or removal proceedings based on the criminality in which they've been convicted for. So we're talking about two different factions as well. Through the criminal apprehension program, this is the safest and the most least intrusive way that we can do our job. We're asking, this is obviously, it allows us to use our limited resources to come within the jails, pick up these subjects that are already amenable to removal under our immigration laws. If, for instance, we don't have this cooperation, it's not going to keep us from still doing our job, but that's when we have to go out, use more of our resources, and go out into communities and target some subjects who may have gotten out of our legal process. And again, that's where we do have a one at-large group that works the Commonwealth here as well. Majority of these we're following up on cases that have gone through our jail systems. There's also other leads, intel leads that come from various law enforcement agencies of folks that we found out after the fact that may have some egregious history and such that we need to get off the streets. Now, the detention aspect, this is always a hurdle that we have to deal with our limited resources. We oversee the civil immigration detention of one of the most diverse and fluid detained populations in the world. The ICE detention is civil, and it is not punitive in nature. So what we mean by that is we can only keep somebody in custody as long as it takes for the removal proceedings to complete, or that we can remove them to their home country. Whatever, if it comes to time where we do not have cooperation or those proceedings are done, those subjects are released back into the communities. There's various avenues. We also have alternative to detention, which is most of the time GPS monitoring systems. The detention population nationwide, especially here in Kentucky, though, our detention bed space changes daily. Someone that we may have had the ability to bring in custody yesterday may not be, that avenue may not be available today for various reasons. So we are always making decisions on the fly, case by case, always weighing the greater good. Does the aggravating factors outweigh the mitigating factors to bring this subject into custody if we have that opportunity? Various reasons of why we may not bring into custody and go this alternative to detention route could be lack sufficient criminality. They could obviously be already documented and going through the removal process, so we kind of need to let that take its course. There could be family ties, family or ties to the community. This is one area that gets greatly overlooked. We're making decisions on every subject we bring into custody, whether or not, again, do the aggravating factors outweigh the mitigating factors. We are taking the family ties and the ties of the community into consideration whenever we determine if and when we take enforcement action on subjects that are amenable to removal proceedings within the United States. And then sometimes the lack of country cooperations. This is a kind of very little known fact, is that, obviously we can't remove folks without their country's cooperation. So there are recalcitrant countries that we consider that are very no cooperation or limited cooperation for us to be able to remove them. And this goes a little bit in the removal process. We remove subjects who are final order of removal issued by an immigration judge or other lawful orders. Removals include non-citizens arrested by ARO in the interior, as well as those apprehended by CBP at the border. And again, from the removal side of things, those do not particularly take place here in Kentucky. We move folks outside of our area of operations to carry these out, but we do have weekly departure flights to Mexico and parts of Central America. Others may be biweekly or monthly, and then we have to work directly with the Department of State in those countries all throughout the world in order to carry out the final ending of our mission. And then here is a little bit more Kentucky specific, some of our local contacts, myself included, and other supervisors, and some of our congressional relations. So then I'll go into the questions that were specifically posed to me. The first one was, when is ICE typically notified that an individual has been detained? This varies. There's really no one size fits all in any of these answers, but most of the time, the majority is because of our law enforcement partnerships within the state. We will either be notified by the arresting agency or the folks that are within the booking offices of those jails where they're taken into. If we are not notified, if we do not have that, I guess cooperation is the wrong way. If that avenue of communication hasn't happened yet, a lot of times whenever they are fingerprinted, if they are someone that has been in previous immigration custody, an automatic flag has been brought up, and we will be notified that way. Or then also the old school, we're scanning forward-facing websites of folks that are foreign born within our jails in Kentucky.
Mr. Bracken, can you stop just there?
Yeah.
I've got a question for you that was part of the questions that we were left with when we talked about this previously. So there is not a national database or any reporting mechanism, say someone is not an American citizen, is arrested, they go to a local jail. There is not a database, there's not a reporting mechanism that the sheriff's office enters in the person's name as someone who's not an American who's being detained. That does not exist. Is that what you're telling me? That y'all have to actually do work to find out who's in jail?
Correct. Now, they're part of the screening process may ask, the country of citizenship or where they are from,
right?
And that portion of it, but there's not a national database that I'm aware of.
Don't you think? Wouldn't that make sense for safety sakes, that we know who's in our jails, and that would make your work a lot easier, wouldn't it?
It would make our work exponentially easier.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You may proceed.
And I think the second portion of this question, I believe I answered the first, is when is ICE required to be notified? The answer is that there is no federal law or federal statute that requires that ICE be notified when foreign-born subjects are placed into jail. This has been an ongoing topic from administration to administration, but there is no federal law that requires notification to ICE if someone is foreign-born booked into their jail. The other question that was posed to me, what process or steps would ICE undertake once they are notified that an undocumented immigrant is detained? This is where I'm going to try to explain the best that I can here, but every situation changes. This is not a one size. This is where our investigative nature comes into play. But first thing we're going to do is we are going to confirm if they are indeed amenable to removal. And that fits a broad range of things. We got to make sure that, again, just because someone is foreign born here in the United States, there's various avenues they could be here legally living, or they may be going through proceedings, or they may be in the process of going through the asylum process or stuff. But we have to make sure that there is current laws that they're amenable to. And at that point, then we go on to the arrest faction of it. Does the aggravating factors outweigh the mitigating factors, and do we have the ability to bring that subject into custody at that time? Sometimes we do, sometimes we do not. The first thing we think of is the criminal nexus and public safety threat. One thing that we are asking every single person that we place into custody or that we focus our enforcement efforts on, is that person an active public safety threat? Are they currently not just here undocumented within the country? We are asking if they are an active public safety threat. Most of the time here in Kentucky, the folks that we are attempting to target, like I said earlier, are all people that have been arrested within our local systems already as an active public safety threat.
Does an active public safety threat immediately trigger the removal of this person from the country, or does that just keep them in jail?
Well, it for sure would not keep them in jail. So we do not supersede whatever local processes they have, right? So those detainers, all we are asking is that once that local process is done, can we please come in and get them? But to answer the other part of your question, it does not automatically mean deportation. So that's where a case-by-case situation comes into play. If it's someone who is simply here undocumented that has never been through the immigration process, they get their right to be heard before an immigration judge, and those proceedings do not happen quickly.
Even if they're a threat to society?
100%, even if they are a threat to society. Now, there are some crimes that if convicted, they do not have the right to appear before an immigration judge.
So it's very possible that a citizen and an illegal immigrant could commit the same crime, and the citizen is kept in jail, but the illegal immigrant is let out of jail because you cannot detain them. Is that correct?
That would not be correct, because the decision to detain is going to be
a local decision.
Yes, correct. So, for instance, a citizen gets arrested for the same level of crime as a non-citizen.
Okay.
The local jurisdiction decides that the end game for that.
Okay. All right. I apologize. Go ahead and finish your.
No, it's okay. I think so. It goes on, and then obviously the next threat are national security threats, and those are all intel driven. The reality is there are people residing in our communities that seek to do harm to our country from within. So those two are our first, our priorities. And at that point, this kind of answered a little bit more. Is that what type of case do we have here? Is that subject been through immigration proceedings before? Have they been deported before? In that case, most of the time, if they have been removed from the United States before, typically it is a relatively swift process to get them removed again. They do not have the same rights as someone who has not seen before an immigration judge. There are other avenues. There's the asylum aspect that still comes into play. But again, that's where it's hard for me to go in and explain exactly what happens in every single case, because the reality is every single case is completely different. And then one other thing that goes along with this is, the immigration laws are administrative in nature, the majority of them. There are some criminal statutes, but the majority of our arrests in immigration law are administrative in nature. So there's a lot of prosecutorial discretion that we can take, and a lot of decisions that have to be made by our officers on the fly, and in terms of the ties that's previously talked about, the ties within the community, the family aspect. Again, I'll reiterate, we are always weighing the aggravating factors versus the mitigating factors of what are at play. There are a lot of family situations where, we have to go the non-detained route because there are family issues that quite honestly we can't overcome. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're here to serve and protect our communities the same as any law enforcement officer is. Every decision we make in terms of deciding who to arrest and when to arrest is made with the intent of making our communities a safer place.
We do have a few questions, and I want to ask a couple more, and then I'll give up the floor to somebody else to ask a couple questions. But in your work, I'm sure you run across and you know the length of if an illegal immigrant comes across the border and they are taken in by the Border Patrol. How long is it until they get a trial on related to their immigration? Now, what's the length of that time as you've currently seen on the ground?
Typically, they will get, if it's in a detained setting, right? Because we're talking about two different issues.
Yeah,
It-
Because
in
if
a
it's
det- in a
detained or if
detained,
they're released,
correct.
if you can answer both.
The detained faction, you're usually getting your first court date within that first week.
Really?
Ideally, week to 10 days. And now that changes. That's not a hard set. But from what I've seen now on the non-detained side of things, so if the decision is to not place that person into custody and release them in our communities, you're getting outwards to a year or more.
Yeah, okay. And what's the reasoning to allow someone to stay in our country versus being detained? What's the thought process there? How do they determine that?
A little bit of everything. So first and foremost, you're looking at the three main threat. You're looking at public safety, national security. So if there's not any major issues there, then you're moving on down the line. And sometimes, like I said, the bed space for immigration specifically is a hurdle that is in some ways insurmountable.
Right. And then my final question is, at the very beginning of your report, you said there was 26 officers in Kentucky and southern Indiana that you work with to enforce the immigration laws. Is that a low number that you've seen in your career? Is that a career low number? Did it used to be higher? And what predicates the number of officers that you have? Is it a budget issue, or if you could address that?
I would actually say that in terms of numbers, specifically in Kentucky, that's on the higher side. Excuse me. Obviously, budget. We're asking for more people every day that can help, enforce our laws. But the budget would 100%.
Okay. Senator Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I correct? I think I saw you said there were 142,580 removals last year. Is that correct?
So I guess I want a disclaimer here that was for fiscal year. These numbers that were posted were for fiscal year 2023. So
Okay, 2023. All right.
Yeah.
So for 2023, 142. How many illegal entries were there during that time through the southern border alone?
I wouldn't be able to attest to that, sir.
1 million, 2 million, 3 million?
There'd be no way I could even tell you.
There's no way you can
thumbs up.
even guess at it?
Not here in Kentucky, sir.
That
There are absolutely avenues that we could get that number a better guess, but not from the interior side of here. No, sir.
Okay. So was that 142,500? Is that nationwide, or is that just from
Correct.
Kentucky? Okay.
Yeah, that's nationwide, sir.
All right. How many did we deport from Kentucky in that region?
I don't have that number, but that's something that I could probably do a little bit more research and report back to the committee once the numbers are final.
Care if I ask a couple more, Mr. Chairman? Now, we've all seen news stories about how there's actually flights being loaded up with folks in foreign countries and actually being flown into the United States using an app. Is that happening here in Kentucky?
To my knowledge, no, sir.
Okay. And I guess finally, well, a couple more. I think I saw between 2021 and 2023, this is from the Department of Homeland Security, that more than 250 illegal aliens on the terror watch list were encountered by Border Patrol, and 99 were released into the interior of the United States. How do you explain that?
I cannot explain it, sir.
Do you think that's keeping our community safe?
No.
I mean, do you all get instructions to release people like this into the community from the immigration authorities in Washington?
I can only attest to what we're doing here in Kentucky, sir. And everyone that we come in contact with, we're making the decisions the best we can based on the public interest.
Okay, and has that public interest changed quite a bit from the prior administration, I guess soon to be incoming administration, and the administration that we're all currently living under?
I'm sorry, has it changed? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, are they telling you to release people that previously would have been deported?
Every 4 years we're a different political pawn to change it based on the administration and their priorities. So
How
yes,
much
I
of a
would
change
say.
have you seen?
Well, I've not seen any change yet, given the election was only a week ago.
Okay, but
I
how
guess,
much
is
of a
that-
change? You've been there, what, 16 years, you said?
Yes, sir.
How much of a change did you see from the period between 2016 or I guess 2017 when he obtained office, in January 2021 when he left, and January of 2021 when Biden and Harris were inaugurated, and now? What kind of policy change have you seen then?
Just with the change of any administration, that the policies are always changing. But again, at the end of the day, our goal is to keep our community safer and make those decisions as we come across these individuals the best we can from an interior portion. Some of your questions that you're asking are on more of a national level that quite honestly I don't have the answer to, respectfully.
Fair enough.
Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two brief questions. Mr. Bacon, thank you for your presentation, and thank you and your fellow officers for your service to our country and what you do to protect us on a daily basis is greatly appreciated. I was paying attention to your reference to the detainer process, how that is a legal request to federal, state, and local agencies to detain those individuals for 48 hours. We often hear about the term sanctuary cities, things like that. What kind of compliance rate does ICE get with local communities and states on doing this detainer for 48 hours? Or are there communities that refuse to detain these individuals?
No, I would say that we have a great cooperation with local jails and local areas within the Commonwealth. There's a couple, but we've had a lot of positive discussions here recently that I'm very optimistic that we're going to get where we need to be with those.
And one brief follow-up, Mr. Chair. You mentioned you referenced individuals who are deported and who come back into the country. Do you have any data on the percentage of those individuals who are deported that wind up back in the country and through the process again?
No, sir, and quite honestly, I don't know if that data would even exist, because if we know that they're back again, then obviously they become a potential target. So
Sure.
If they're here, they're living in the shadows.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bacon.
Representative Raymond.
Thank you.
She's down here.
Thank you for being here. It's really helpful to hear from somebody who's doing the work and to dispel some of the myths and some of the rumors. I want to ask you about the effect of this work on children, right? You've spoken to the important work that you do on public safety. What's the effect on children? Are we deporting any children from Kentucky? And if we're not, what happens when a parent is deported?
So in terms of the children, that's a more national aspect that I would have to get back with you. But in terms of us, every encounter that we have, we're asking the questions regarding children. We ask mother and father, do you have any kids? Where are they? That type of situation. And those are all part of the aggravating and mitigating factors that we're going through the process to determine, if and when we take custody of someone.
Thank you. To clarify this point, the mitigating factors, it's people on your team who are doing that work, or is it judges who are doing that work?
There's multiple layers. So we're doing it on the ground. Officers, and that's verified by their supervisors and on up through our chain of command. And there's also another layer, before they go through immigration proceedings. At every layer, this can change, right? Because you get new information at every section. So those are always reconsidered.
And so we're not sure if, say, a parent is being deported. We're not sure if the parent has the choice to take the child with them back to the home country, to leave them with family here, or to put them in maybe the child welfare system.
There is that option that if there is a child involved, that the parent is given certain opportunities. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Witten.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Bacon over here. Hi, you had mentioned about the country of origin for the illegal immigrants, and you said that we are kind of at the mercy of the certain countries if they accept
Yes,
these
ma'am.
individuals
Correct.
back.
Correct.
Can you give us maybe a list of those countries that do not that are not reciprocal for us, and then what happens with those individuals? If we cannot,
I can't give you a definitive list because the thing is, some of these change on a case-by-case basis too. We're presenting and we're trying to work with the Department of State in those countries. But to answer the latter part of your question, what happens? I mean, like I said, this goes back to the immigration detention not being punitive. So once it's determined that that subject cannot be removed to their home country for whatever reason, they're not subject to ICE detention anymore, and they are released back into the community.
Regardless of what they have done.
Correct. Again, it goes back to our detention is not punitive. So whatever, no matter what crimes they committed prior to, if they are not subject to removal from the United States, we can no longer hold them lawfully.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 4 more people, and we're going to close the list here. Representative Camille.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm here, Mr. Bacon. Thank you for being here, and I appreciate all of the information that you've provided. From the presentation, what I gathered is that the primary focus is on criminals, undocumented criminals or undocumented individuals who are committing crimes in the United States. The president-elect has promised mass deportations on day one. So I've got a two-parter here, and I think pretty simple. One is his promise is to focus on criminals who pose, undocumented. So sorry,
Oh.
I got my words all mixed up here. He's focusing on mass deportations on day one without limitation of focus on criminals who pose a threat. What would that process require as far as identification, arrest, detention, and removal? And the second part of that is, do the Immigration and Homeland Security agencies currently have enough individuals, enough staff, and personnel and resources to do mass enforcement, mass deportation?
Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to comment on the first question. There's no policy in place yet, or no way that I can give a definitive answer when I don't have the information. I can tell you that we're limited manpower-wise, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So without knowing what the plan is or what the policy, there's no way I can answer that. But I appreciate the question.
Okay, once again, we're not going to take any more questions. We got 4 more people. Representative Graham.
Okay. Can you hear me now? You were talking about those who are detained and sending them back to their country. What happens if their country refuses to accept them back?
It would go back to the answer I provided Representative Witten. It's once it's determined that we can no longer that subject is not removable. Again, it would be a release. Immigration detention is not punitive, so we.
I'm
sorry,
I just
go
want
ahead.
to follow up. So you're saying that they would be released?
Yes, sir.
Back into the population?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was what you.
Yes,
okay,
that
thank you.
was correct.
Senator Nemes.
Yes. Have you seen much child and human trafficking in Kentucky because of the immigration?
Yeah.
I would have to defer that to one of our other agencies within here in Kentucky because, like I said, specifically the trafficking portion is not typically handled by ERO officers, respectfully.
Do you have access to that? Could get back with us on that.
I don't have access
Okay.
to that sort of database.
Thank
No,
you.
sir.
Representative Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much for your presentation. I'm sure you're familiar with the term entry without inspection. And just going back again to the question that was asked previously by Senator Wheeler, have you seen where there's different ways of handling entry without inspection by the different administrations and how that's happened and changes that have occurred over your past 16 years?
the term entry without inspection is another unlawfully present, right? So that that has changed. It changes with every administration based on the policies and based on their guidelines. Yes, but I will say that overwhelmingly that we're always trying to take the public safety factor first and foremost. We're gonna try everything we can to address and target those that are causing problems within our communities first.
Thank you. May I ask a follow-up, please? So then, with the entry without inspection, so have you seen some administrations that have been more lenient in regard to that with the people that term applies to, and that they are actually given more grace or more ability to stay in our country and less efforts are made to deport them?
I don't think I'm following your question. I apologize.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, our final question is Representative Chester Burke.
I'm sorry, it's been answered.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah.
It's been answered.
Okay. Well, sir, I thank you so much for being here today, and believe it or not, we took it easy on you.
I have no doubt. I appreciate
Now,
that.
there were a lot of blanks in when we last addressed the subject in the interim. There was a lot of blanks, and you've helped us fill in those blanks. I'm just hopeful that policies and procedures change where you can law enforcement correctly.
Yeah, so
it looks
the
like
tornado status on tornado and flood relief.
your mic's on.
Oh, sorry.
So it seems like listening to your explanation that y'all are kind of doing law enforcement with one hand tied behind your back, and hopefully we'll correct that over the next several months. But thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate your time and your travel to be here. So thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.